Welcome everyone, Vidette Mayer here. I wanted to end this week with a video daily wrap-up. I wanted to kind of demystify some of the terminology that I'm using in our daily tune-ins. And since it's the first week of these daily tune-ins, I wanted to define some of the intent behind them and also the process, so that when you do see these videos or the podcasts or get them in your inbox, you kind of understand how we can practically apply them to your everyday life, because as I'm sending them out, I am also practically applying them into my own life. So these daily wrap-ups, I believe, are going to be more of an opportunity for us to kind of summarize the week, the energy of the week, as well as look at different ways that we can implement what these daily tune-ins are providing for us. And I will also share a little bit about how they are, how I am practically putting them in my own life. So you can kind of see how we take these ethereal, energetic ideas and apply them into everyday life, so that we are actually ascending into these higher frequencies and into higher realms of being during a time that's could appear to be very chaotic in our global in our global world. So the first thing that I really want to unweird, so to speak, is the ascension process. And the first thing I want to say is I love living in the weird. Our culture, our collective, kind of leads us or teaches us that the weird people are the ones to stay away from. Weird ideas might be dangerous ideas, and yet if you look at the definition of weird, I think it's the second one that comes up. Is I don't have the proper words, but actually let me look it up for you. Definition. It does say suggestive of the supernatural. I love that definition, because basically what we're talking about here in the ascension process is something very supernatural. It's beyond the physical world understanding of how we operate and typically how we've been taught in our education, our traditional education systems and our religious systems. We are going beyond those systems into a world of dimensional frequencies, of vibration, of energy. And when we talk about that things in the normal world, people kind of roll their eyes and think, oh, you're one of those. And a lot of times they'll say it. However, it is one of the most pivotal foundational pieces of how we create our lives. And in the ascension process, if you look up the idea or the definition of the ascension process, it is really the spiritual process of ascending our souls into higher frequencies, into higher realms of being. If you remember the story of Jesus, he whether you're a Christian or Catholic, whatever, we all know the story of Jesus. We've been taught it in some way, or we've read about it. And Jesus really is an example of a consciousness. And when he reached a certain level of consciousness, he ascended into heaven. The interesting thing about that piece of it is that in that time of our planetary history, one could not ascend into the higher frequencies of the fifth dimensional frequency here on planet Earth. Therefore, when someone reached a high level of consciousness, they had to let go of their body and ascend into a higher state of being. Jesus, as a human being, in his physical self, had already achieved his own heaven, which is why he had no fear. He only operated in peace and harmony, even when faced with people like Pontius Pilate or those who criticized his way of being. We are in a similar, every human being ever in existence has been in a similar process of ascending their souls, evolving their souls. So as we learn our lessons, so to speak, as we live our lives, we either take the lesson and learn from it and ascend into a higher state of intelligence or consciousness, so that when we meet that same lesson again, we actually process through it in a higher level of existence. Here now, in these potent times that we're in, and where our planet is in orbit, we are literally in a space in the cosmos where we can ascend into those higher frequencies of consciousness and stay in our physical bodies. That's why spiritually being here is such a special time. For us to be here on this planet in human form during this time is an extremely, I keep saying special. It goes beyond just coincidence or perfect timing. It is actually, there is a reason why each human being is on this planet at this time. We have access now to a completely different way of living, way of being that we can still experience in human form. I take this very seriously, and I believe if you are here, you do too. You feel a calling to be something more in this world that has forgotten that we live these spiritual lives. And we live in a world where majority of the humans have a consciousness where they believe that the third dimensional world, the physical world, is the only world we live in. But we're getting to a point where so many people are starting to understand more and more that there is a higher state of being, there is a fifth dimensional state of being, whatever the words are that you're comfortable with. There's different ways of explaining it, but we are all understanding that we're ascending into a different level of consciousness. These daily tune-ins are here to remind you every day in your inbox or on YouTube or on the podcast, wherever you find them. They're here to remind you what it is that we can tune into that day so that we can tune out of the physical world that is simply a projection of what we have created in our individual world, and it overlaps with others that are resonating in our same vibrational frequency. So we see this outer world, and we've been taught that that is what is, and we have to react or respond to it. So as we start to open up our perspective of who we are, if we are attached to the third dimensional world, we may understand that, oh, the physical world happens to me and I'm no longer going to react to it in fear or anxiety or in anger. I'm going to respond to it. Now you're elevating your physical existence into, okay, this thing just happened to me. How do I really want to respond? And as we start to work out that muscle of response, we can say, I'm going to have more empathy here. I'm going to have more compassion, which means we are moving into our fourth dimensional space of the heart space. We're now operating from the heart. We are ascending into a higher frequency of the heart frequency, which is our emotional intelligence. And when we come from the emotional intelligence, we can then respond better to the physical world around us. As we get more and more accustomed to that kind of living, we then have the opportunity to move through that fourth dimensional state of being into the fifth dimensional state of being, which is led by our soul, which is led by our higher self, which is the part of us that's plugged into the higher consciousness of source consciousness. Source consciousness, you can call God, you can call nature, you can call it whatever you want, but the source is the source that creates everything, the universes, the galaxies, the planets, the beings on every planet. We are not the only beings in the universe. There are many different dimensional beings, but because they vibrate in different frequencies, we can't see them with our own eyes, but we can sometimes sense them, right? If once you get into the higher states of being, into those higher dimensionals of the fourth and fifth dimensional beings, you can start to feel that there are other beings, energies, call them what you will, and you start to tune into the fact that we are not the only ones here. We just have these physical senses that we've been taught to trust, which we can, but we also have to learn that they are not the only senses that we have to experience life through. When we operate in that fifth dimensional sense from our soul, the part of us that is plugged into a higher consciousness that creates all, we then start to understand and can sense and sometimes then see that there are other beings around us that are helping us. So the ascension process takes us into the position of the dimensionality, the frequency, the energy of leading with our soul, which is the part of us then that is looking out and projecting into our physical reality the heaven that we create. We then understand that from our soul leading, the ego or the personality side of us kind of goes to takes a more submissive role, because there's still a part of our lives that do need the ego, that do need it, but we don't need it to be in charge anymore. It's in charge of the the third dimensional physical part of us. And when it's in charge, it's the one that wants to keep us safe, that wants to keep us in what it knows. The personality / ego part of us is the part of us that is our subconscious programming. It's our operating system. And when the operating system is led by our ego, it wants to stay where it already knows, and it's programmed from our life experience from the day that we are born. It picks up all of our experiences and remembers them as fact. Therefore, when we have the same lesson that shows up, it's going to respond the same way it did before, and that's why we stay in this repeated pattern of behavior and thought and emotional intelligence of being afraid of something over and over and over again. Every time we experience it, we have the same thoughts about a person, place, thing, circumstance. So when that person, place, thought, or circumstance comes up, the ego wants to say, oh, we've been here before, this is what we usually do. And then we get into that part where we start to move into the fourth dimensional space of living, where we start to have our heart then take the lead and say, okay, here's this thing again, here's this person, place, thought, or experience. The heart wants to say, okay, how do we want to do this differently? How do we want to feel in this process? If this person comes into our life again, what is it? How can I respond differently? How can I respond from a different place of empathy and compassion? So we start to practice that, and now our heart is taking the lead. And then once we get pretty good at that, we then move into the soul-led thing, the soul-led energy, the soul-led dimensionality, where then we say, the soul says to us, this person, place, thought, or circumstance is no longer serving us. This lesson has already been played out. This is when we actually speak our truth. This is when we actually come from that soul level and either choose and discern whether that circumstance needs to be completely removed from our energetic life, or do we want to evolve it in some way? So from a soul level, we then create our heaven on earth by discerning with every experience, is this in my highest and best good? Do I need to remove it? Or is this in my highest and best good? Do I need to keep it and bring it into my heaven and project that out, that energetic projection out into my physical world? So when we are operating from that, what we see in the physical world is created from soul, which is created from the higher consciousness that creates everything. Therefore, we then see in our worlds a more heaven-like place of existence, because we have projected it out. And when we are projecting that out, we are then operating in a resonant frequency. And at that point, we start meeting others in that resonant frequency. We start building communities. We start inviting family and friends to come with us into this heaven that we've created, if they are in our highest and best good. We start moving into the physical world, into the places that resonate at that same frequency as us, because we've ascended to our own heaven on earth. Therefore, when we look out and we are now surrounded in our own heaven, in the places that we want, our soul is meant to be because it is fed by this physical place. We then see the people in our lives that fill us up with energy rather than sucking it out. So this is the process of ascension. It is getting to the point where we vibrate at a place where we can create our heaven on earth. And when we have these communities, the energy and the resonant energy expands and multiplies. People start seeing our world that we've created and say, how do you do that? I'm still stuck in this world, in the third dimensional world where everything's in chaos. And then we get to help. We get to model. We get to support these people in their own ascension process. That is what the ascension process is. It's a beautiful way of living a spiritual life that then has a physical world that reflects it. It's not some etheric, crazy, hippie way of thinking as we've been taught. It is the natural evolution of human existence. And we can either go in the natural evolution of human existence of up-leveling and ascending into higher states of being so that we can create a world from the chaos it's in now. We've got this split that needs to happen. We can either create a world that grows and thrives and offers abundance for all, or we can continue down the road that we have been, which is almost descending in frequencies. Not almost, it is. We see it. We see all of the things and the people and the organizations and the leaders and the political organizations that have been built on these lower frequencies that shoot out things to be afraid of and that create chaos to divide humanity into sides so that we're constantly arguing and fighting and in a place of war. But there is that collective of individuals who we can't operate there anymore. It doesn't resonate anymore. It's painful. Therefore, we have to then now create our own individual worlds and project that out into the world so that we can create a whole new existence on earth. These daily tune-ins are my attempt at sharing what is coming to me in the process that I have to stay in tune with that which raises our frequency, raises my own frequency, raises the frequency of my family, so that we can live in more of a heaven on earth and not be so attached to everything that's going on in the physical world. This is not an easy process because there is a lot of things happening in the world that want to suck me individually into that third dimensional mess that's going on. And yet it's in the process of awareness to know when we are attached. When I am attached to what's happening in the third dimensional world, that I have to remove myself from it and put myself into my own heaven in that moment. What is it that I can do or be in this moment that will raise me up into a higher perspective? Understand that the world as I know it has to fall apart so that others can also see what is happening in this world and choose at that point whether they want to create a heaven on earth or whether they want to stay and play in that third dimensional lower frequency of fear, anxiousness, worry, shame, all the things that are projected out from those who want to keep us in these lower frequencies. These daily tune-ins this week, I want to say, have been an incredible opportunity for me to start to really take my focus and turn it into these higher frequencies. I noticed myself getting caught up in all the things that I was seeing in the world, all the things that were being revealed, and saying, I knew it. I knew that's what, I had a feeling that was what was going on. I'm so glad that that's being revealed. And that awareness was sucking me back down into these lower densities. And bringing these daily tune-ins, this process looks just like this. I want to I want to share with you what this process is so that you can understand when you receive these messages, what it takes, where it comes from, because it's not me just making them up. Every evening, I sit down with my journal and journal out some of the issues that I've seen myself get pulled into, some of the things that I'm feeling that feel in those lower densities, the things that are scaring me, the things that are bringing me anxiety, the things that are frustrating and angering me. And there is a place for all of those emotions. They are not wrong. So if you're feeling them, it is okay. It is yours to take a look at it. They are simply red flags to say, hey, how can we shift this consciousness to a higher one and see from a higher perspective so that we understand more what is the root, what is triggering these feelings of anger, fear, worry, anxiety, etc. Name it, whatever it is. When I sit there and do that, I get it all out in the journal and then ask my higher guides, my higher self, what is it I need to know? And at that point, a lot of these messages come through. And when they come through, they've brought me so much peace and understanding of how to then take what has been triggered in me into that higher level of perspective so that I can see it and look at it and be like, okay, I know what this is about. And I can change then. I can choose to change how I see things and how I work through them and how I feel about them before I go to bed, so that I'm not going to bed with this anxiety on my chest. I'm not going to bed with anger in my heart. I go to bed with a solution that I can sit and marinate. My subconscious mind then marinates on what it is that has been revealed in these journaling sessions. And now my subconscious mind is being reprogrammed in the evening when my body is at rest with the new perspective. And when I wake up in the morning, I get to share that with you. And my hope for you is that you can take these daily tune-ins and start your day with them and see the perspective of things that are going on. And I would even suggest in the evening, read them again, listen to them again, however you consume it, and look at your day and say, how did I do with this? It's not a judgment, it's just, did I see things from a higher perspective because of this new perspective delivered in the morning? It can be used as a tool to help you navigate throughout your days. These weekly wrap-ups then are going to then take a look at how the messages of the week and what does that look like in the world practically. So on Monday, we took a look at taking time to put a stake in the ground. How did you put a stake in the ground? How did you decide that you were going to shift things differently? How did you decide that you were going to put a stake in the ground and say, I am now going to respond differently to these matters? Or was there something that came and said, you know what, I'm going to commit to this? For me, practically putting my stake in the ground was to commit to doing these daily tune-ins every day, because I saw how it was already shifting me. The first night I decided to do it, and I was like, you know what? This is my stake in the ground. I'm going to commit to these. I'm just going to see what happens if I do this every single night. I deliver them every single morning, and I'm going to start to create the community in the world through social media, through sharing these, so that I can start to resonate and find the people in the world that I can connect with who are also on this ascension path, who are committed to it. So this is my way, by doing these daily tune-ins, this is my way of connecting with you so that we can bring our two worlds together and we can beam out these higher frequencies in our own individual worlds so that our individual worlds can come together and multiply and expand, and we can truly start to create an illusion, right? We project out our own individual worlds and we can create a new world based on our higher consciousness. The next one was your pathway is right in front of you. The pathway is always our soul's pathway is at every moment right in front of us. It's just ours to choose. And operating in that third dimensional frequency of, quite frankly, it's led mostly by logic, mostly by what we know. At that point, we typically the ego will take us to what we already know, so we keep repeating the same pathway and running into the same hurdles. Where when we expand into the higher consciousness of soul, there is a place for logic as to how do we move down this soul pathway, what is the strategy behind that, but at the very same time, we have to choose the soul's path that is right in front of us. So it's staying in those higher frequencies so we can see it. Practically, how it showed up for me is literally the pathway is, again, these daily tune-ins. I can wake up in the morning and be stuck in fear of everything going on in the world or some challenges that I'm having in my own personal life, and I can choose to stew and be afraid and be anxious of this pathway, or I can choose the soul's pathway. And since I committed and put the stake in the ground to these daily tune-ins, I turn my attention to what is the message that I just got last night. What is it that needs to come through? How can I share this? I share it with you. And every time I have shared these messages every morning, I leave the process filled. My heart is filled. Now I'm in a higher frequency, and the afternoon is spent with my husband and my dog. We go out, we go for walks, we go get yummy food, and we are then in a higher state of being. So we are living more of our heaven. We're not there yet. We're still in the process of keeping our awareness into the ascension process. What is it going to take for me to ascend a little bit higher today, and a little bit higher tomorrow, and a little bit higher in the next day, so that we are in that consistent growth of expanding our lives. The next one was the pressure is increasing. This is when the internet went down, like Facebook, WhatsApp, all of them went down, and the pressure of literally the cosmic energies are surrounding our planet at the moment, kind of putting pressure on all of us to raise our consciousness, to wake up. The world is going into chaos so that we can see what our consciousness as a collective has created in the world. And we've created some pretty heavy stuff. We've created some things that are throwing a lot of fear in people, but that simply means it's a projection of the fear that created it. When we get enough pressure and kind of see all of the chaos around us, we can then say, whoa, no more. So this chaos that we're seeing in the physical world is just helping those who are still attached to that physical world and reacting to it to be forced to shift into a higher consciousness, to be able to say, okay, I can't do that anymore. I cannot live and work and breathe in fear every single day. I have to respond differently. So it's creating a massive awakening of people. And what we mean by that is they're waking up and saying, I can't live like this anymore. So some will fall away, some will check out of this world, and some will then say, I want to live a more peaceful, heart-led life, which then starts their journey to the fourth dimensional heart-led life, so that when they get there, there's nowhere to get, but as that process expands, they can extend into then, oh wait, I want to completely go where the soul leads me. So it's an ascension, it's an elevation in consciousness. So everything that we're seeing in the world, when we understand what's happening, that we are being guided and we are being helped by higher consciousnesses to support this evolutionary ascension in our planet and all of its inhabitants. Even our pets are having to come up in frequency. Animals, everything has to, because our earth is also ascending into these higher frequencies. So everything is feeling the pressure in the moment to decide and discern, how am I going to continue to live in this planet? Am I going to create my own heaven on earth, or am I going to get sucked down into these lower frequencies and be in constant reactionary mode? That's exhausting. It takes our power, it takes our energy away, it sucks us dry. And the more that we are sucked dry, the less our physical bodies can stand. We must ascend into these higher frequencies in order to have our bodies be healthy, have our emotional bodies or energies be healthy, as well as our spiritual souls be evolving as they are meant to evolve. Thank you for being here if you've been here this long. I know this is a little bit longer of a video, but I really wanted to take you through the purpose of these daily tune-ins. I wanted to demystify and de-weird, unweird the whole idea of ascension and what that really means. It's just the natural progression of our souls, right? It's the sacred part of life. It's the most sacred part of who we are. And we've gotten so far away from that. I have gotten so far away from it. And when I touch that part of me, and I know when you have those moments where you maybe go outside or you're sitting with a pet or a child and your heart just overflows, and you find that place where you just know that right now in this moment life is so sacred. You just want to weep, you want to cry. That's how we are meant to live our lives. That is heaven on earth. And the more moments we have like that expands and multiplies our existence, our physical existence, and life becomes more sacred. And we don't put meaning in the things out here. We don't put as much meaning and definition of success in the things that we own. Our ownership, our sacredness comes from within, and then our outer world reflects that. That's what this is all about, is finding that sacred space within and answering to the sacred and following the sacred part, the sacred soul of us. And when we start and we operate in that fifth dimensional, that higher frequency, that higher consciousness of soul, it drips down into our fourth dimensional emotional intelligence, and then down in our third dimensional worlds, into our physical worlds. When we operate from the top, it comes down. When we try and continue to operate from that third dimensional space, that physical space of us, it can't go up, right? It can't hit our soul. And so our souls disappear into the abyss of, all the things, chasing all the things in the third dimensional world that we're taught to chase to live a good life. And then we finally get to that point where we're in the nice house and we've got the cars and we've got the family, and we're like, man, I feel so empty. This isn't, maybe I need to go buy another house, or maybe I need to upgrade the house. And then we do that, and it brings us joy for a week, and then we're like, whoa, this is a big house to have to clean now. And it's constantly chasing the next thing for that next spurt of happiness. Whereas when we ascend and we do the work to shed all that no longer serves us, we rise up into these higher frequencies. And at that point, no matter what it is that we have in our life, it brings us immense joy. It brings us heaven on earth. So here's to creating our heaven on earth. Thank you for being here. If you would like to subscribe to these daily tune-ins, please go to my website, videttemeyer.com, and join our email list. I also post them on Telegram. I would highly suggest coming over to Telegram. With Facebook, Instagram, all of that kind of going through some changes. There's going to be some chaos there because we know at this point it's been built on a lower frequency foundation. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Telegram was still up when everything else was down. So Telegram seems to be where people are kind of communing now. So join me on Telegram, but most importantly, the email list is where you'll get these delivered to your inbox every morning, and every Friday you'll get the weekly wrap-up, and we'll take a break Saturday and Sunday, take a breather, live in your heaven on earth, and we'll reconvene every Monday in your inbox. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to building a community and building more of a heaven here on earth for all of humanity. Mwah.
If today's daily tune-in brought you value and insight, please consider giving in return for that value by leaving a love offering. All donations go to keeping this platform operating and in service to humanity during these transformational times. To go even deeper into your soul frequency, please consider these offerings. For personal insights into your most pressing questions and concerns, get an energetic insight reading delivered directly to your inbox. To take a quantum leap in your transformation, book a personal session with Vidette. There are several options available based on how deeply you would like to go into your most desired soul-led life. To find more information and to book your sessions, please visit videttemeyer.com.